Deep within the heart of the rainforest, where mists never lift and the sound of rain becomes eternal, a city of stone once breathed beneath the green canopy. Palenque, the sacred jewel of the Maya, carved from limestone and memory. Its temples gleamed under the tropical sun, polished white against the endless forest. Water flowed through aqueducts like veins of life, feeding gardens and altars. Every wall was carved with glyphs, stories of gods, kings, and the path between life and death. Above them, towers reached toward the heavens, not as monuments of power, but as bridges between the earth and the divine. At dawn, the jungle awoke to the hum of drums, to flutes echoing between the temples. Priests in robes of feathers and jade poured offerings of maize and blood to the sky. Smoke from burning copal rose in spirals, blending with clouds and mist. They believed that when the wind moved through the trees, it carried the breath of the gods themselves. And yet, even as the city glowed with harmony and devotion, beneath the stones, time was shifting, and the forest was waiting to reclaim what man had borrowed. At the heart of Palenque, the air trembled with rhythm. The sound of drums rolled through the courtyards like thunder, calling the people to the temples. Flutes carved from bone cried softly above the beat, while conch shells moaned like the wind that moved between worlds. The priests, their skin painted in red clay and black ash, climbed the temple steps barefoot, their arms raised to the heavens. Each carried sacred offerings, maize, obsidian, feathers, and the heart of sacrifice. The scent of copal resin filled the air, heavy and sweet, clinging to the skin like smoke from another world. They believed that every sound, every flame, every breath was part of a divine dialogue, that the gods answered not in words, but in rain, lightning, and stars. As the sun reached its highest point, a single beam of light pierced through the temple's stone corridor, illuminating the altar. The priests fell to their knees, chanting in the language of creation, words older than memory. Far above, the jungle swayed in rhythm, leaves trembling to the pulse of devotion. And for a brief moment, time itself seemed to stop, as if the gods were indeed listening. His name was Kinich Janab Pakal, the sun shield of Palenque, a king who ruled not with armies but with vision. He rose to the throne at the age of 12, and for nearly 70 years, he turned a jungle city into a kingdom of stone and stars. Under his reign, Palenque became a masterpiece of architecture and faith. Temples aligned with the sun and the solstice, palaces built with perfect geometry, carvings that spoke of gods walking beside men. Every wall told a story of life, death, and the path between. Pakal believed his soul was born of the heavens. He called himself the child of the maize god, the one who dies each season and returns to life again. To the Maya, this was not myth. It was truth written in the sky, repeated in every sunrise. When the king grew old, his people carved a tomb worthy of a god. Deep beneath the temple of the inscriptions, they built a stone chamber sealed with sacred glyphs. The air below was cool and still, untouched by time. There, his body would rest, surrounded by offerings of jade, shells, and obsidian. And on the night of his death, the city fell silent. Priests carried his body through torchlit streets, the air filled with music and tears. They placed him within his sarcophagus, the great stone lid carved with the image of Pakal, descending into the underworld, reborn as the maize god, rising again through the cosmic tree. As the chamber was sealed, the last sound to reach the king's resting place was the echo of the drums fading into the earth. Outside, rain began to fall, gentle, endless, as if the heavens themselves were closing their eyes. Centuries later, when explorers unearthed his tomb, they found his face still watching, a jade mask glowing softly in the dark. And even now, deep beneath the ruins, it feels as if the king still dreams, waiting for the gods to waken once more. Years passed, and the jungle began to change. The rains that once came with perfect rhythm stopped arriving. The rivers grew thin, their songs turning to whispers. The crops withered beneath a pitiless sun. The priests watched the sky, searching for answers among the constellations, but the gods no longer spoke. Smoke still rose from the altars, but the wind carried it away too quickly, as if the heavens had turned their faces elsewhere. In the temples, the drums grew quieter. The songs of worship turned into prayers of desperation. Children were born under empty clouds. Fields turned to dust, and with every passing season, the great calendar wheels of the Maya kept turning, precise, beautiful, and indifferent. Fear took root in the hearts of men. Some whispered that the gods were angry. Others believed that time itself was ending, that the sun would die and the world would be swallowed by darkness. The city that once glittered like gold beneath the sun now stood silent beneath the burning sky. The jungle waited, and in that stillness, the empire faith began to crumble, not from war, but from within. The drums stopped first, then the songs, the laughter, the soft breath of copal that once rose every dawn. Courtyards grew cold, torches went out. Only rain spoke between the stones. Families began to leave Palenque. Some followed thin rivers north, searching for kinder skies. Others stepped into the green labyrinth, carrying maize, obsidian, and names of their gods. Behind them, the city stood like a perfect shell, bright, empty, listening. Roots slid into the seams of carved glyphs. Vines folded over stairways where kings once walked. Birds nested in the mouths of stone serpents. Lizards warmed on altars washed by storms. The jungle, patient and eternal, drew a slow breath. Priests, who had measured time by stars, whispered their last prayers to rooms already owned by shadows. No processions came, no drums answered. Ash cooled in the braziers, offerings hardened to dust. Rain polished the limestone until the temples gleamed without witnesses. Wind carried petals across abandoned plazas and left them to rot among leaves. At night the forest sang, frogs, insects, distant thunder, a hymn with no human voice. Seasons turned, ceilings fell, stairways sank. A fig tree split a wall and drank the light. What had been a kingdom of calendars and gods became a garden of silence. And so Palenque disappeared, not in fire or battle, but in the slow embrace of roots and time, waiting beneath the green for someone centuries later to touch the stone and remember. Before the jungle took it all, there was one final breath, a slow, broken heartbeat of the dying city. The last generations of priests watched the temples crack. Rain leaked through the ceilings where gods once spoke. The sacred fires that had burned for centuries now flickered weakly, their smoke curling upward like the memory of prayers. Hunger came first, then sickness, then war. Neighboring cities, Calakmul, Tonina, turned their eyes toward Palenque. Old alliances fell apart, and the jungle paths became rivers of blood. The people, once united by the stars, now fought for what little remained: water, maize, hope. The drums of war echoed through empty plazas. Stone idols were toppled, not by invaders, but by hands that no longer believed. The altars were shattered. The glyphs that told the stories of kings were erased by smoke and time. And in the heart of the city, beneath the temple of the inscriptions, the tomb of Pakal slept untouched, while above him, his empire turned to dust. When the last fires went out, no one marked the day. The final words of the Maya scribes were left half carved in the walls, unfinished, like the breath of a dying world. Then came silence, a silence so deep that even the gods seemed to have left. Only the jungle remained, whispering over stone, its voice patient, ancient, eternal. When the people vanished, the jungle exhaled. It crept back over the stones, slow and patient, reclaiming what was always its own. Roots coiled through stairways and cracked altars. Moss grew across the carved faces of gods, softening their fury. Where once there had been fire and drums, there came rain, endless, whispering, cleansing. Trees split open temple walls, their branches piercing sunlight through the roof of forgotten chambers. Snakes glided across the carvings of kings. Jaguar prints marked the same paths once walked by priests. Life had returned, but in a different form, untamed, unruled, eternal. The forest did not destroy Palenque. It buried it gently, layer upon layer of green silence. Birdsong replaced prayer. Mist replaced incense. And the jungle began to dream, weaving the ruins into its own story. Centuries passed. Roots thickened around the temples like veins. Rain sculpted the stone back to earth. Only shadows moved through the ruins, and the sound of dripping water, the slow heartbeat of the world before men. In the end, the jungle forgave everything. It covered the scars, silenced the cries, and sang to itself. A hymn older than gods, older than kings, a hymn of return. Centuries later, when the forest was cut by explorers' machetes, the stones of Palenque woke from their long sleep. The first rays of sunlight touched carvings unseen for 1,000 years. Faces of gods emerged from moss and shadow, their eyes still calm, untouched by time or memory. Archaeologists brushed away the soil and found stories carved in perfect lines. Each glyph, each fragment of jade, spoke of a world that had never truly vanished, only hidden, waiting for someone to listen again. They found Pakal's tomb deep beneath the temple, his jade mask gleaming like trapped starlight. The same air that once carried prayers now carried dust from their breath. And as they lifted each stone, it was as if the city itself was exhaling. But Palenque was not dead. It had simply changed form, from city to forest, from kingdom to echo. Its spirit lived in the rain, in the roots, in the rhythm of life that returned. Even now, when thunder rolls over Chiapas and mist drifts across the temples at dawn, the jungle still whispers the old names, reminding the world that nothing truly disappears. It only waits to be remembered.